So there's always two challenges whenever I give these talks. The first is I have this title called the Supply Chain Development Director, which no one knows what it means, which is actually quite handy, and I recommend it to you. But I actually have two fundamental accountabilities. The first is I look after our technology program, our process technology program, which is about how do we use process intensification to transform the way we supply product to the market. The second part is I look after our, we call it operational excellence program or continuous improvement program, and how do we actually take our lean journey. And what I want to do this morning is just share with you what we've done, where we've got to, and some reflections from ourselves on what we think it takes to embark on a lean journey. So the second challenge is always, when we talk about Akzo Nobel, nobody knows who Akzo Nobel is. As Dave said, when you talk about Dulux, most people have heard of Dulux, or if you come from the United States, you might have heard of Glidden, which was formerly one of our brands. Or if you're from the Netherlands or Belgium, you've probably heard of Sikkens, which is part of our portfolio as well. But actually, Akzo Nobel has three distinct areas to its business. It has a chemicals company, so we manufacture chlorine, we manufacture salt, we manufacture the chemicals that go into the fracking industry in the US, perhaps not the most controversial topic here. We also make performance coatings, so if you happen to crash your car, there's a good chance that we'll provide the coating to repair it. If you bought a piece of furniture recently, it's probably got one of our coatings on it. And if you're flying around in an aeroplane, perhaps that's also got one of our coatings on it. So we also have that side of our business. And then we have the side that most people know is the decorative paint side, which is the architectural coating side for buildings. And in terms of the decorative business, which is a part of the business I come from, to give you a view of it, there's about 3,500 people working in the supply chain. Akzo Nobel totally is about 50,000 people. In our decorative supply chain, it's about 3,500. We have 41 factories across the globe, stretching from Buenos Aires in Argentina all the way through to Papua New Guinea. And we have about 110 warehouses that we run to stock and distribute the product. And as Dave said, in 2009, our current state was as follows. We had a few individuals who actually knew anything about lean. And when we looked across those 41 factories, we could only point to perhaps 2 or 3 of those factories which were on a serious continuous improvement operational excellence journey. And when we looked at that, that all came down to one thing, the individual charisma and drive of the leader. And normally when we looked at it, they'd come from another organization, had experienced continuous improvement, whether it was Lean or Six Sigma, in a different organization. The second problem we had was that our business is growing in China. In fact, I was just talking to Jim about China, about the emerging markets in Asia. We're experiencing phenomenal growth, and we needed to be able to support that growth with cash investments in our asset base. And the only way we could see to do that was to actually reduce our inventories. So we had to get cash out of the inventories that we had. And to give you a view of ourselves, we're a bit like, if anyone's ever seen the Field of Dreams, that was how we ran our business. We built stock, we believed customers would come. And therefore we had massive, or we still have in fact, massive amounts of inventory within our supply chain, which is tying up cash. So we needed to leverage that. The third issue we were facing was we had low operator engagement. In fact, the saying in the company is, we employ people with 2 hands to move things around, and we got a free head with them. We never chose to use that free head and that brain, but that was sort of the way we approach things. And our ability to visualize, to standardize, and to actually do problem solving was totally variable, or as Dave often reflected to me, perhaps even non-existent if we're truthful. So that's where we were in 2009, the sort of current state, the reality we were facing. So what did we do? So we decided that what we should do is start with the leaders. And a lot of people yesterday talked about the importance of leadership and the leaders being committed. And that's exactly where we started. So we took 180 supply chain leaders from across the globe, and we did 3 things with them. We worked on strategy deployment. We made sure that those leaders understood where we were trying to get to, why we were embarking on a lean journey, what we were trying to achieve. As Dave described, we taught them how to see. And the phrase learning to see was absolutely vital for us, to teach those leaders to look across our supply chain from our customers all the way through into our supply base and actually understand the problems that we were facing and where our challenges were. We also introduced them to the lean principles. How can you move to flow? How can you achieve pull? What can you do? And we did that via a simulation. And then finally, we did a taster for A3 thinking to start people really thinking about how to express their problems, how to try and solve them. And the result of that was that when we looked across those 24 different supply chains in 6 different countries in the world, we saw very similar problems cropping up. We saw that it takes us approximately 24 hours to build our product. And if you look across our entire supply chain, for our fastest moving product, which we sell every day of every week, the amount of inventory was worth nearly 100 days. So I think someone in the healthcare presentation yesterday had their value add to non-value add. Ours was really, really low. It was less than 1%. And in many of our markets, it's less than 0.5%. And this is going through some of the biggest retailers in the world, the Home Depots, the B&Qs, the Castoramas of the world. So having got the leadership aligned, we then said, okay, what we now need to do is create a series of experiments across the globe to see how we can take the lean journey forward. How can we engage the operators? And actually, for a science company, the idea of going out and experimenting was actually quite novel to us, which is pretty interesting, actually, especially as one of my colleagues from R&D here believes we are actually an experimentation company. And as we set out on those experiments, what we did is we put in place a few standard processes to guide the team. And the first was we built a house of improvement, which was an assessment methodology to help our teams understand where they are on the improvement journey. So under each of the parts of the house is a word model, an assessment framework, which enables our teams to actually understand what a vision of world-class would look like, where they themselves might be, but most importantly, what might be a first step they could take to improve their own performance. The second thing we did was we specified very clearly that we actually wanted everybody to have a CI program, a continuous improvement program, following the lean principles. And to enforce that, we actually added that into our management routines. So when we do quarterly performance reviews, monthly reviews with our teams, that is always part of our agenda. We're always asking teams, what are you doing? What's happening? So we created an environment where we wanted everyone to understand that it was important to the company, that we wanted to drive forward. And then finally, we created a common set of metrics, a common sort of platform of measurement. And we said to everybody, look, you need to increase your service. You need to increase your capacity or your output. How you choose to use that increased capacity could be in a number of ways, but we'd like you to think about decreasing your stock, decreasing your cost. You must improve your safety and environmental performance in terms of your environmental impact being lowered. And all of those depend upon reliable, responsive performance. And you need to be coming up with plans and activities that drive that into the business and the way you're working. So having set that as a framework to the team and set the team off, this is what I'd like to show you now is really what several of those teams have done from across the globe. So the first is the European team. And in Europe, they've gone with what they call the beacon approach. And the idea of a beacon is you create a beacon area in the factory that models the behaviours that you want to have. And the approach here is we take a cross-section from a factory, so from the operator who works on one of our filling lines, who maybe is putting that can onto the line, all the way to the site leader, and we take them through a program. And the idea is that we learn what to do, so we do learn tools, we apply those tools, and we put in programs that sustain those. So we teach the teams to see the waste, to make the performance visible, to develop their own future states, to teach and coach one another, then to apply that in the workplace, and then eventually put in processes that sustain that. And the way that program works is it's a 13-week program with a complete team. They start by value stream mapping, picking up on the tools that we'd learnt as a leadership group, but now extending that all the way down to our operating team. And I have to say, a year and a half ago now, it was one of the most inspiring moments for me to stand and watch a group of operators who, as I said in my sort of early points, we'd previously considered were only there for the use of their hands and the ability to move things, to actually stand and explain to us the value stream map for their factory, exactly how it worked. These were guys who'd spent 15, perhaps 20 years working in the plant and had never actually worried about what happened outside of the work environment that they found themselves in every day. We then take that team into what we call an instructor's course, into a set of tools and instruction course. And one of the powers of that is that by having the leadership team and the operational team together, they get a totally new respect for each other. What we learn and what we see as we do this is that some of the things we find our operators do outside the workplace is unbelievable. They're running football teams or soccer teams for the guys from the States. They're involved in amateur dramatics. They're running theatre groups. They're involved in charities. And we never were able to harness that energy. But by getting the management teams and the operating teams to go through a journey together, to work together, they come out with a totally different respect for one another. The managers see the operators in a totally new light. Vice versa, the operators see the managers in a totally different light. They have a totally different respect for what they do, and it's one of the biggest pieces of feedback we get from the work we do. We then move into what we call the delivery phase to actually apply the knowledge and the learnings that the team have been taught to the problems they've seen in the value stream mapping. And they then spend the 13 weeks actually applying tools. And that doesn't mean just applying them, it means actually transforming the areas they work in and putting in processes and ways of working which will sustain that journey over the long run. We started with that program as the first experiment in the UK, with the UK teams in 2 of our sites, one in East Anglia, one near Newcastle. And the European team are now deploying the same methodology throughout Europe. So we've got currently the similar program running in Greece, we've got it running in Turkey, it's just started in Italy, it's been running in the Netherlands very successfully, it's been running in Poland. So again, as we experimented there, what we did is we made adjustments to the way that the program was working, and then we basically tried to standardize what we were doing and apply it everywhere else. So with that, we've been able to transform the engagement levels for our operators, some of the results of our factories, the way they work, and actually really start upon a continuous improvement journey driving us towards the end-to-end value chains. In China, we've taken a slightly different approach, so it's a different experiment. As I said, our business in China has been growing rapidly. So if you look on it, year on year, we experienced about a 30% growth. So it's 3-0, yeah, against a country that's growing by 7 to 10%. And for those of you who have ever been to China, you will know the amount of infrastructure investment, the housing, the number of cars, etc., is just phenomenal. And what most people don't realise, everyone talks about the labour force in China, but if you've ever been there, one of the things you will know, it's a very migratory workforce. The workforce turns over really rapidly. So in our factories, what we experienced is that we actually turn our workforce 3 times a year. So you can imagine the challenge if you turn in a workforce 3 times every year to get the discipline in. So what the team there said is, all right, what we actually need to do is look at our leadership and our leadership routines and make sure we've stabilised that. And they came up with what they call the Managing Daily Improvement Process, MDI. And they've applied, first of all, the leader standard work. So although the workforce, the operational workforce, turns 3 times a year, fortunately the leadership team is stable. So they were very clear about what they wanted the leadership to do, the leadership routines. They applied leader standard work through check sheets. It's perhaps for us as a Western audience a slightly strange way to work, but they're very happy, very comfortable in their culture. You're nodding there, with check sheets was following up. And they actually hold each other accountable. So they show respect for one another as a management team, as a workforce, by actually following up with one another and checking each other to make sure they have followed up on their leader standard work, that it is publicly accountable, that it is visual to everybody. And the visual management extends through the team performance. So a lot of team performance boards around the factory. The individual line performance was people recording daily what they're achieving. And then the actual where are they with the order. So sort of hijunker type box understanding. And then they put daily accountability in through tiered accountability sessions. So the management team walks around the factory every single morning, goes to the line boards, discussion with the operators, what's happening, what's getting in your way, how can I help you solve your problems, what's going on that we need to improve. When they've done those Gimba meetings, those go and see meetings, they then come back to a leadership meeting where they bring the problems back together, and then they set out action accounting and tracking. And again, through their action and tracking process, they also hold one another accountable. So you, as a management team member, if you come in and say, I did my action, I solved that problem, they immediately hand your action to another member of the management team and say, could you please validate that the operators are happy that the solution works for them. So very, very tight collaboration as a team and really, really working with the operators. And what that's transitioned to is, even though we have this transitory workforce, we're now getting lots and lots of ideas and suggestions coming in from the shop floor through suggestion scheme programs. And as you can see here, in our Shanghai factory, they had 32 Kaizen blitz as a result of operator suggestions. And in the Guangzhou factory, they had 191 in the first half of this year. So really, really starting to see engagement of their workforce changing, even though it does turn over so rapidly. They also haven't forgotten what we learned with Dave back in 2010, that it's actually about the end-to-end. And we've just opened a new facility on the Guangzhou site where we're actually trying now to move to pull. And the philosophy the team have adopted is we want to be able to make today what we sold yesterday. So our field of dreams of building inventory driven by our MRP process, we're starting to break that down to change the way we do it. And we're truly trying to move to a pull replenishment system. What that's taken is a design of factory which is completely different to what we've ever done before. So our chief marketing officer actually said to me in 2010, yeah, look, you do breakthrough technology, you're the process technology guy, but let's be honest, you still make paint the way the Egyptians did, which was a bit of a humbling moment. Anyway, we have managed to change it a bit from the Egyptians, perhaps not much, and we do have a completely different plant design, which takes us to the ability to achieve a pull replenishment. And with that, our responsiveness to our customer demand is something completely different, and we hope will take us into a new world. This plant will be fully operational by the beginning of December. In fact, I'm going to China early December to see it operating. And already we can see the benefits that there's no inventory. Our ability to service customers is completely different. So again, a team there in China who've taken on ideas with massive problems, but have tried and achieved a different outcome. If I then move on to Southeast Asia and Asia Pacific, where we operate in Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia, the team there have taken, again, a slightly different approach, and they've used Kaizen weeks, Kaizen events. And what they've achieved is, first is they've actually got phenomenal participation across the organisation. So as they say, they've got 25 teams here, and they've had about 180 people participate. And what's really interesting is when they do these Kaizen events, they actually get people spontaneously coming to ask to participate. So the organisation, the office hears this is going on, people get curious, they start coming down, talking to the team members, and then actually start trying to get involved themselves or say, hey, we've got a problem, could we do this? So it's been really infectious in the way that they've gone about this. And after Art's presentation yesterday, I might need to go back and look at this, but for us, we believed it's achieving spectacular results. So an example of one of them where they set out with a business case, they put together the Kaizen team. Again, the Kaizen team, a bit like the European model, drawn from all levels across the organisation, from shop floor through to management team members. They do training with practice, so they train tools, they look at how they're going to apply tools. They go off out and go and see. They use those value stream mapping skills again to actually apply it. They use Paretos to understand what they're doing. And then they actually transform the work area or the piece of the plant that they had identified a problem with during the week and create a new future state, which is then embedded as the current state, and the cycle begins again. So phenomenal results and achievement being done in SEAP. And again, they also are now starting to see the benefits of that operator engagement through what they call their Golden Ideas program. And this is an example from our Vietnamese plant, where you can see some of the ideas coming through from the operator level, actually driving forward improvements across the whole factory. In LATAM, in Brazil, we faced a slightly different challenge. And the challenge there was really more about the alignment of the management team and what they're doing. And the journey that they've undertaken has started with the Hoshin. So to get the manufacturing group, the warehousing group, the R&D group all aligned, they are using a Hoshin deployment to actually make sure the different parts of the organisation are all moving in the same direction. And this is following a fairly classical model where there's the supply chain Brazil, A3, so what do they need to achieve? And then that's actually broken down by the different manufacturing, parts of the manufacturing unit and the logistics unit and the health and safety department into their own individual A3s for what that department needs to achieve over the year. That then generates a whole series of actions and a war room. And from that war room, they then follow up and progress. Are they making progress? Where are they as a team monthly? So again, a slightly different approach, but a response to their own business situation. So having run these experiments, one of our questions then is how do we actually start to standardize and deploy those? And what we've done is, first of all, we've created a common platform for communication across the organization. And several people yesterday spoke about knowledge management, and for me that's one of the biggest challenges of the job. How do you get the knowledge spread and transferred across the different 41 sites, different cultures, different backgrounds? So we created a common platform with a newsletter, some examples on the slide there. The second thing is we started what we call a CI council. So the council is responsible globally to actually decide what should become standardized. And we held our sort of first meeting back in March of this year in our Vietnam factory. We actually attended one of the Kaizen weeks at the same time. And what was brilliant about it was we didn't spend any time arguing about what should be in. We weren't in the philosophy of, let me tell you why that won't work for me. We'd managed to change the organization to that's interesting, how could that help me? And through that, what we saw is that very quickly we moved to standardization. People just saying, look, from Europe, I love what they're doing in China. I don't need to think about that anymore. I'll just apply that MDI process. That should be our standard. From the Kaizen events, everyone going, yeah, I can see how I could add value. That could add value to me. Let me just adopt that methodology. So we're not needing anymore to reinvent the wheel. We're not needing to find our own solution to our own problems. We're actually able to share because we've actually all gone out and experienced things from ourselves. We've tried our own things. We've found out what works, what doesn't work, and what our need is. And that is a big change for us. Historically, we were actually an amalgamation of companies. We were family companies that have been acquired over the last 30 years and welded together. So very different backgrounds, very different ways of working. And when we originally set out our vision in 2009, we did actually have standardization on there, but we never believed we could achieve it. Through the work we've done, through the processes, we're starting to get there. The other thing is we do actively encourage transfer of people. So we are moving people, we are encouraging people to go and see other regions and supporting that. So we had our continuous improvement managers in Europe recently, all participating in Kaizen events in Malaysia. We've got our Brazilian team coming up in March next year to participate in some of the European projects. So really trying to exchange and foster the culture that it's all right to steal from other people. Steal with pride, adopt what other people are doing. So in summary, it's been a 4 or 5 year journey. Starting from a sort of vision, a reflection on where we were, the 2010 activity through the value stream mapping end-to-end across the supply chains, then in the 2011, 2012, allowing the different regions to go and run their own experiments and see what they needed, what worked for them, what happened. And then as we've moved through this year and going into next year, it's about the standardization and the embedding of that cultural shift across the whole organization. And our reflections overall are that you need the following elements in place to create this type of transition. And it starts with the top, with the organizational alignment. So you need the leadership to be aligned about where they want to go. Once you've got the leadership aligned, our view is you need to understand the business case. Why are you doing this? What has it been done for? You then need to put in place the right metrics, whether they're the operational metrics or the key measures you want to measure yourself as a supply chain. Having done that, you need to actually start to enable that transformation. And the enablement comes through your lean CPI programs. It comes through that detailed skills training of the tools with the right purpose to all levels of the organization. You need to create those step change projects and initiatives. And you need an assessment methodology to let you know, where are you? Where am I on my journey? What should I do next? Where do I need to focus? Having enabled that transformation, you need to support that transformation. And you need to support it with the right resources, with the right experts, whether they be from outside of the organization or people you recruit into the organization or people with knowledge in your own organization that you're perhaps not utilizing as well as you can. You need that knowledge management and communications to actually transfer your learnings. And you actually need a program, a support mechanism for your education program, which we call our Supply Chain Academy, which is all about the leadership, education, and alignment.